Everything that provides pleasure but stops personal accomplishments, things like alcohol, drug addictions, television, consuming habits, reinforces the power of the dark serpent. An individual will not be able to control that energy unless they balance it with the strength of the white serpent. And that means reinforcing the body and the mind with activities that provide health and physical accomplishments. Now, the reason why most therapies have low success rates is related to the fact that their main focus tends to be in suppressing the energy of the dark serpent, while their successes are due only to those that are able to find balance independently. Psychiatry, with all its theories and descriptions, hasn't done any better than a shaman would. Within this line of dark force experiences, the ultimate punishment is incarceration, while the ultimate achievement would be everlasting power. The one that hasn't lied doesn't fear his honesty. The one that hasn't committed a crime doesn't fear justice. The one that has nourished his body doesn't fear disease, and the one that has accumulated vast sums of wealth doesn't fear poverty. When all fear is eradicated from the soul, true joy is felt. Now, this person doesn't need drugs and won't seek compassion or agreement from others. And this is true freedom. This is a truly free person. And those believing that there's a shortcut to such joy are either fools or delusional about it. The truth is simple, and it's relatively easy to alleviate a person's suffering by teaching her to appreciate the natural beauty of things, namely flowers, trees, rivers, and birds. But it requires knowledge, requires experience, the means and the understanding to truly see beyond beauty in order to find it in any physical manifestation, including the least pleasant ones, and much more in order to transform any reality according to that comprehension and power. And from this standpoint, the power of the dark serpent is suppressive and attracted by the smell of defeat, self-pity, and victimization, but fed only by fear and strengthened by anger. It is the energy of destruction sent upon the one that is not indulging her existence in promoting life, mainly their own. The dark serpent seeks allies and can destroy an entire race of beings, as it has done many times in history. Identify a nation in fear, and you will know where the dark serpent will act next. The dark serpent has its fangs in the neck of the United States of America, because we have not learned to balance wealth with integrity. The bridge between spirituality and money is happiness. But happiness is not obtained without peace, and peace is unreachable without balance. The purpose of our existence in a material world, as well as the reason for thousands of reincarnations on earth, is found within this paradigm. In the materialistic perspective about reality, we notice a force confronting the need for equalization of complements in the path for spiritual development. Therefore, in its most metaphysical meaning, we can perceive the concept of balance as referring to the interaction between fire and water, earth and air, yin and yang, strength and weakness, action and inaction, man and woman, cautious and uncautious, and so on. And in its pragmatic form, such duality is seen in the divergence between spirituality and money, as these two elements can be acknowledged as the lowest and highest forms of being, mind and matter, body and soul. The evaluation of concepts as high and low or good and bad, however, only finds a realization in the human mind, diluted by material operations related to space and time, and unaware of the importance each dualistic meaning has within the eternal cycle of life and death. A person can assume the possibility of life without one of the two poles, but such beliefs reveal faults within the dynamics that affect our existence. These beliefs become false. Inside this truth, those focusing on the first stage manifestations of the Kundalini energy and the ones doing it on the seventh both struggle throughout life and between themselves, never reaching freedom from reincarnation, even though their spiritual level may seem different. Upon contemplating the depredating act of beings converged to obsessive spiritual studies, begging for money on the shores of the river Ganges in the holy and oldest world city of Varanasi, or sadhus dedicated to the exploration of drugs effects in Rishikesh, any clear mind would understand that the word sacrifice has been somehow misunderstood by those whose texts followed clearly indicate the opposite, revealing the need for a balance between spirituality and wealth, and their source as being the same. The Rig Veda, for example, clearly states that a combination of righteous knowledge and righteous actions help us to earn wealth. Never were humans intended to prosper in health, intellect and spirit, or body, mind, and soul without everything that supports and promotes life, money included. The only question with wealth is, what do you do with it? Wealth has become the main determinant of life on planet Earth, and a massive karmic challenge that, if surpassed, can lead to prosperity in all realms of existence and ascension. Otherwise, will consume everyone in the fires of desire, self-destroying the mind and mankind. And not only that, as it can lead to the corruption of the spirit in and beyond the afterlife. When the Bible refers to the love of money as being the root of all kinds of evil, it's talking about a life dominated by the forces of monetary achievement, or the Serpent of Death, an energy leading all current affairs on this planet, which is led by the whore Babylon, the United States of America, which has tried to dominate this entire planet with this Babylon bankster system. This Serpent of Death has put its fangs definitely within the neck of the United States of America. This force is not under control and has not been properly assimilated, this balance of spirituality and wealth. Life depends on the correct balance of forces controlling existence. Human beings ascend spiritually if they can incorporate financial gaining in life, but descend to a lower world if failing to do so. The financial crisis that the United States faces, once prosperous, that it faces today, and many more will in the near future, is based on this hidden energy, untamed by any other. The secret here being exposed has been so well hidden for thousands of years that the masses would see its revelation as blasphemy. And nevertheless, it couldn't be applied by elite secret societies for thousands of years if not true. We can perceive the two complementary forces of life as a black serpent, earth, water, matter, and money, and a white serpent, air, fire, energy, and spirit, within a marriage between two individuals representing them. In this situation, a man in the seventh chakra, the Sahasrara, the crown chakra, will naturally fight with his wife, found within one of the lowest chakras, the Muladhara, and both will struggle, furthermore, when apart of each other, in this case, within themselves. The only situation in which such fight may not occur is when both believe to be separated while codependent. Now, to illustrate such a situation, we would have a woman deliberately handing down money to a beggar. As a matter of fact, this is exactly the situation that most spiritual ascetics end up creating as they refuse independence in a contradiction to their spiritual path of ascension beyond material needs. We have here a contraction in which society, expressing itself in different forms, appears divergent, but is in fact refusing a true human nature and the main principles of the soul. The marriage between these two opposite forces leads to a confrontation related to the lack of balance. A spiritual man, by disregarding his material needs, will fall sick often, put his family in danger of not having enough to pay a rent or buy food, and a material woman, bounded to such man, will struggle alone in order to maintain her family intact. The disregard of spiritual individuals towards the affairs of the world increases the material density of such reality. It's actually a very selfish act with visible and predictable consequences. It's been said that Gandhi, though he was considered a very spiritual man, failed in his marriage by not providing the attention and the necessities, energetic and material necessities for his family. And this previously described woman, lacking understanding about the spiritual connection inside her marriage, will fight over money and food, demanding that her husband may help more, and in the end both will complain about each other and their needs. Even though the ego tends to protect itself, reason why these two types of persons seem to avoid comparisons between themselves, the fact remains that both sides are right. To clarify furthermore this situation, we should say that the only differences between atheists and spiritualists is related to their misunderstandings and lack of sufficient information about life. The spiritual man in the preceding story, if not having his material needs satisfied, will end up as a beggar, depending on other people's charity, and this dependency will progressively disconnect him from his spiritual experience, leading into a more materialistic one dominated by worries and fears, which will make it impossible to experience his true self. Anything else than that would have to be categorized as an apathy and a withdrawing from life, also known as chronic depression. This is why Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, referred that the middle way avoids both extremes. It gives vision, it gives knowledge, and it leads to peace, to direct acquaintance, to discovery, to nirvana. Nonetheless, the challenge remains that even this is interrelated with others' free will. When such free will remains negative for a long period of time, and for whatever reason, the amount of an offer decreases, and the spiritual man inevitably suffers the effects. Proper meditation and living is not possible under an empty stomach. The fact maintains that the poor cannot easily be as spiritual as the wealthiest. Accepting this inevitable relation of cause and effect consists in recognizing money as one of the manifestations of matter, just like body, space, and mind. Abundance in the form of the necessary amounts of food helps acquiring vitality and health, but also more space and time, manifested in the form of better transportation and easier access to faster and more expensive means of communication. Because the material world is a reflection of what humans believe about life, this brief explanation allows noticing that the imbalance between the black and white serpents of Kundalini is relatively easy to observe. To simplify the previous description, an ascetic will be blessed in spiritual achievements when having his physical needs satisfied and be blocked from accessing them when suffering physically, while the egocentric individual will mainly suffer emotionally and depend on a spiritually balanced relation to feed such necessity. This truth can be testified by the dramatic and complete failure of psychiatry. Never will any therapy be able to restore sanity to a human if observing only his brain, because the spirit isn't confined there, and especially if neglecting its existence, as it's not bounded or limited by the laws of the mind. And a consistent observation of today's world allows realizing that nearly all suffering is coming from a feeling of spiritual emptiness. This happens because as we evolve and demand for more intense physical pleasures, so the codependent spiritual equivalent of ourselves evolves as well. On the other hand, this predominantly material world is leading spiritual individuals into a certain kind of extinction, as they have fewer opportunities to prosper. This means that the next spiritual revolution will have to occur within those enjoying the higher physical blessings as a response to their emotional suffering. The answer for the problem, the situation the United States is in, is not going back to pre-COVID, pre-pandemic lives, but embracing the totality of existence and balancing the spiritual with the material. This transformation has already started in North America, as many gurus moved here to satisfy the increasing demand for insights about life. While this happens, Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America sink into a deeper experience of poverty, with the exception of China, where abundance is forcing the acknowledgement of the intense spiritual suffering of its people. While North America and China rediscover and reform their spiritual values, the rest of the world relearns the basic lessons of the dark serpent as they approach, once again, a dark era of struggle for balance in the physical world. This struggle may begin with a collapse of the old financial mechanism and an obsolete religious dogma, which is increasingly powerful in the Middle East, and end with the reformulation of both, either at the end of a war between Europe and Arab nations, or an agreement that dilutes their cultural and religious differences. The ideas of Eurasia being promoted for decades in documents of the European Union has predicted it within its agenda, and the military actions in the Middle East by those that have once supplied their weaponry are certainly provoking an occurrence. However, even those secret interests coming from a coalition between UK and the USA may lead Europe into a war with Iran and Saudi Arabia and Russia and China in order to secure their world domination. Such an event, from another perspective, represents a path applying God's will in a world lost in greed and individualism. A world in which China will either perish in a massive destruction by an atomic bomb, as Japan once almost did, or blend with American values. An examination of how the dark and white serpents of the Kundalinic life force energy operate in each individual allows a more precise understanding and prediction of such movements inside this world. A materialistic individual without his spiritual needs satisfied will sink in fears, worries, greed, anxieties, and delusional ambitions. His emotions interrelated to physical security will become negative, blinding him from any spiritual blessings within reality. It is said that a man hasn't changed his life positively. A man that has not changed their life positively has not suffered enough. This belief is based on the principle behind the dynamic of human emotions, which explains that fear leads to anger, and anger to sadness or chronic depression, a state from which dualistic transformations occur within the being, leading him to choose between higher good or evil. Every crisis represents the end of a cycle and the beginning of another, but it's the individual that decides on which soil he'll plant new experiences. A person in pain is battling among two forces, demanding for dominance in the soul, the white and dark serpents. Whatever choice is made, it will dominate every action and thought until the cycle is over and the balance between the two serpents is acquired. Failure in obtaining it leads to death and reincarnation. This explains why the achievements of a materialistic person will never be enough, and the more money is made, the more is wanted. Materialistic people can't ever feel safe in life. And this is a state felt by many billionaires that end up becoming obsessed with the numbers in their bank accounts and in saving as much as possible all the time, not really enjoying what they have and the potential they possess to live a more fulfilling life in which personal interests are explored to the maximum. These individuals are trapped inside the first chakra, the Muladhara. Nevertheless, a lonely spiritual man will eventually end up being trapped in the first chakra as well, the dependency for money. While the ultimate goal of a being consists in surviving as a soul, a disregard for his physical existence will diminish the potential of that soul to exist in full consciousness of itself. The soul progresses just as much as its physical existence allows it to. And that's why we have a reincarnation every time it did not happen to the fullest of its potential. Someone born in poor surroundings may find himself limited by life, but there's no greater limitation than the one we impose upon ourselves. Many individuals born in starvation inside poor countries have built their path to fortune, and many more will. We are not what we are, but who we think and believe to be. This ultimate law has always applied in any circumstance and always will. Many survivors of the Holocaust are living proof of that. We have to go into despair and go beyond it by working and doing for somebody else, by using it for something else. A long journey in India, along with several meaningful encounters with spiritual individuals, and the reports thereof in many books found that through many written materials, has led me to confront the fact that most sadhus are not what they seem or preach, but rather a representation of the many branches of religious misunderstandings, as their need for charity and marijuana has long deprived them from their spirituality. In several popular cases, their focus in gaining followers and more money, just like a businessman would focus on more clients and income, is intriguing and makes us wonder about the mindset and paradigms of those they can convince. Nevertheless, we can assume that the extreme of this negative experience will lead both poles to the same outcome, depression and suffering. When the soul is not in balance with life, it will invariably suffer from it. This premise can easily be felt by experiencing its opposite path. If every day you lay down on the sand of a beach to catch sunshine and bathe in its clear waters, a sensation of natural joy and motivation to live will arise after a few moments, days or weeks, depending on the primordial state. The same unexplainable joy can be felt when hugging a tree or petting an animal or hugging an animal. This happens because all nature possesses the energy of life, and its frequency changes ours positively. Truth does not require proof, but it can be proven. It is with no surprise that many scientific studies have suggested the previous habits as having tremendous healthy benefits on the mind and body, alleviating and curing most diseases from stress and anxiety to sinusitis, high blood pressure, and even cancer. From the opposite side of this equation, we can also observe with scientific measurements that only humans with high frequencies can detect the immanence of life in their surroundings, the kundalini that flows, the God force that flows through all life. Knowing that the heart is more powerful than the mind allows us to testify the evidence that we become what we feel. And within these emotions, the key of life is found, but also sanity, health, and prosperity. America, please wake up to the spiritual dimensions of life. Please hug a dog today, hug a dog, and realize God.